8 years ago, I found myself in a cramped apartment, staring at a wedding suit hanging neatly in my closet, freshly pressed and ready to wear. The ceremony was scheduled for just 6 days later at Riverstone Hall, the most stunning venue in Chicago, Lily Hartman's dream location. She had been insistent about it. White stone walls, glittering chandeliers, and a terrace overlooking the lake. It was the kind of place reserved for those with wealth, which I didn't have. But I had a steady job, a reliable paycheck, and the belief that our love could conquer anything. That week, everything collapsed. It began on a Wednesday morning when my boss summoned me to his office. His desk was empty except for a single folder. He didn't hesitate. "Ethan," he said, "the investors are backing out. We're shutting down half the company. I'm sorry, but your position is eliminated, effective immediately." The word struck me like a blow. My wedding was days away. I left the building with a box of my belongings, wondering how I would break the news to Lily. We had always said we were a team. I believed she'd reassure me that it was just a temporary obstacle. That evening, I called her. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "Something happened today. The company lost its funding. I was let go. But I'll find something soon. I've already got some leads." She was silent for what felt like an eternity. Then, her voice flat and uncertain, she said, "My dad says this changes everything." My stomach twisted. "Lily, it's just a job. I'll find another one. We're still us." She didn't argue, but she didn't comfort me either. The next day, she asked me to join her for dinner with her parents. That meal felt like stepping into a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided. Richard Hartman sat at the head of the long dining table, a glass of whiskey in hand. His wife, Eleanor, kept her eyes lowered. Lily sat beside her, quiet. Richard didn't waste time. "Ethan," he said bluntly, "you're a sinking ship. My daughter won't marry a man who can't provide the life she deserves." I clenched my jaw. "This isn't about money. It's about love. We'll face this together like every couple does," he smirked. "Love is for fairy tales. In the real world, security matters. Stability matters. You've lost both." I looked at Lily, searching for the woman who had once promised me forever. She wouldn't meet my eyes. 2 days later, she ended the engagement. She didn't even do it in person. Her mother arrived at my apartment with a small velvet box and said, "Lily wanted you to have this back." The engagement ring lay inside. Cold and lifeless. The venue was canceled. My mother, Grace, called me in tears after hearing the news from a family friend. My younger brother, Ben, showed up at my door with a 6-pack of beer and said, "They're wrong about you, man. One day, you'll prove it." I told myself I'd move on. But the truth was, the humiliation lingered. It wasn't just that Lily had left. It was the way her family had made me feel worthless, as if my value could be measured by my paycheck. For years, their words echoed in my mind whenever I worked late, took a risk, or hit a roadblock. And they resurfaced last month when I signed the final documents to acquire a mid-sized tech firm. That deal came with an unexpected bonus: full control of Hartman Manufacturing, Richard's company. I could have kept it quiet. I could have taken the win and stayed silent. But I didn't. Instead, I rented Riverstone Hall, the same chandeliers, the same white stone walls, the same terrace that was supposed to be the backdrop for my wedding vows. Only this time it was for a celebration marking my company's biggest acquisition. I personally curated the guest list, ensuring every major business leader in the city would attend. And right in the middle of that list were 3 names: Richard Hartman, Eleanor Hartman, and Lily Hartman. The invitations were sent in embossed gold envelopes. On the back, in small black letters, it read, "Hosted by Ethan Cole." Ben grinned. When he saw them, "You're not just a fleet," he said. "You're an entire navy." The night of the celebration at Riverstone Hall was clear and crisp, the kind of October evening that made the city feel alive. The venue glowed from within, chandeliers casting warm light through tall glass windows. Guests in tailored suits and shimmering dresses moved across the marble floor, champagne glasses in hand, their voices blending into a hum of wealth and influence. I arrived early, wanting to take in the room before the crowd filled it. The staircase, where I had once imagined Lily descending in her wedding gown, now stood as the centerpiece of the evening, lined with fresh flowers. The terrace doors were open, letting in the scent of autumn air. Everything looked exactly as it had in my memories. But this time, the event was mine. I was no longer a guest in someone else's world. I was the host. My team moved through the crowd, introducing themselves to potential partners, answering questions about the acquisition. I shook hands, posed for photographs, and exchanged pleasantries, but my focus was on the front entrance. When the Hartmans arrived, the atmosphere shifted. Richard entered first, dressed in a dark gray suit that likely cost more than most people's monthly rent. His stride was confident, but the moment his eyes met mine, he faltered for half a second before recovering. Eleanor followed, her expression polite but strained. And then came Lily. She looked almost exactly as she had a decade ago, though there was something sharper in her features now, a slight tension in her smile. I crossed the room to greet them, each step deliberate. "Richard, Eleanor, Lily," I said. "I'm glad you could make it." Richard's voice was controlled. "We were surprised to see your name on the invitation." "I thought you might be," I replied. "After all, it's not every day a man acquires the company that defined another man's career." A flicker of something passed through his eyes, quickly hidden. "Business changes hands all the time," he said. "True," I agreed, keeping my tone even. "But some transactions carry more weight than others." Eleanor offered a polite smile, as if hoping to ease the tension. "This is a beautiful event, thank you." "I wanted it to be memorable," I said, "especially for certain guests." Lily finally spoke, her voice softer than I remembered. "You've done well for yourself," I met her gaze. "I have. And I hope you found what you were looking for." She looked away first. As the evening progressed, I made sure they saw everything, the slideshow of our company's milestones. Projected on the wall, the conversations I had with other executives who spoke to me with respect, the speeches from my team about our future plans. Every moment was a reminder that I was no longer the man they had once dismissed. Halfway through the night, I took the microphone to address the crowd. The room fell silent. 10 years ago, I began, I stood in this very hall, expecting to start a new chapter in my life. That chapter never began. I was told I was a sinking ship. I was told I didn't have the stability or the value to build a future worth sharing. Tonight, I stand here not to prove anyone wrong, but to show what is possible when you refuse to let someone else define your worth. I didn't name the Hartmans, but the pause I allowed afterward was enough for the implication to sink in. I saw Richard's jaw tighten, Eleanor shift in her chair, and Lily's hands clasp in her lap. After the applause, I stepped down and moved through the crowd. People stopped me to shake my hand, congratulate me, and ask about upcoming projects. The Hartmans stayed for another half hour, speaking little. I caught Richard watching me from across the room more than once, his expression unreadable. As they prepared to leave, Richard approached. "You've built something impressive," he said, his voice measured. "I built it because I believed in myself," I answered, "even when others didn't." He gave a slow nod, as if conceding a point he didn't want to admit. Eleanor offered a polite goodbye. Lily hesitated, then stepped closer. "I was wrong," she said softly, "about you, of everything." I looked at her, remembering the man I had been when she left the man who would have given anything for her to stay. That man was gone. We all make choices, I said. I made mine too. She held my gaze for a moment before turning away. When the doors closed behind them, I felt no surge of triumph, no rush of revenge. What I felt was lighter, as if a weight had finally lifted. The night wasn't about humiliating them. It was about reclaiming the space where I had once been made to feel small and filling it with my own success. As the music swelled again and laughter filled the air, Ben clapped me on the back. "You did it," he said. "I did," I replied, raising my glass to the fleet. We toasted, and for the first time in years, I felt completely free. When the last guest left Riverstone Hall and the staff began clearing the tables, I stepped out onto the terrace. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, the same view I had once imagined seeing after saying my vows. This time, there was no heartbreak, no hollow silence, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had taken control of my story. Ben joined me, hands stuffed into his pockets. "You know," he said, "I thought tonight would be about payback, but watching you in there, it didn't feel like that. It felt like you just closed a door." He was right. In the years after Lily left, I had thought of this moment as the final blow in a fight I never started. But standing there now, I realized it wasn't about them anymore. It was about me, about the man I had become through every long night. Every risk, every setback I refused to let break me. My mother came out next, her coat wrapped tightly around her. "Proud of you, son," she said. "Not for this," she gestured toward the glowing ballroom, but for getting back up when it would have been easier to stay down. Her words meant more than any compliment about money or success. Grace had seen me at my lowest, jobless, heartbroken, humiliated, and she had never stopped believing I could stand again. Inside, the cleanup continued, the sound of clinking glasses and shifting chairs filling the background. I watched the reflection of the chandeliers ripple across the lake and thought about the journey here. Losing my job had felt like the end of everything. Losing Lily had been a deeper wound, but without those blows, I might never have pushed myself far enough to see what I was capable of. The following week, news of the acquisition spread through the business community. Articles ran with headlines about Titansoft's expansion and my role in it. Richard's name was barely mentioned. In every interview I gave, I spoke about resilience, innovation, and the importance of surrounding yourself with people who believe in your vision. Not once did I reference the Hartmans directly. The story wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. One afternoon, I received a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a short note in Lily's handwriting. "I hope you're happy. I truly mean that." I sat with it for a while before tucking it away in a drawer. I didn't feel the need to respond. Whatever we had was a closed chapter, and I had no interest in rereading it. Business continued to grow. We launched new products, hired more staff, and expanded into international markets. But I made sure I didn't lose sight of what mattered. I still visited my mother every Sunday for dinner. I still dropped by Ben's garage to sit on the hood of a car while he worked and talk about life. One evening, over a simple meal at my mother's kitchen table, Ben asked, "So, what now? You've reached the peak. Where do you go from here?" I thought about it for a moment. I keep building, not for anyone else's approval, just for me. It struck me how different that answer was from the one I might have given years ago. Back then, I measured success by how it might look to others, especially to the people who doubted me. Now I measured it by how it felt to wake up each morning with purpose. The lesson wasn't about proving someone wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could take the worst moments of my life and turn them into the foundation for something stronger. Looking back, I realized I had been lucky in ways I didn't see at the time. Losing Lily spared me from tying my future to a family that valued appearances over loyalty. Losing my job pushed me to develop skills and resilience I might never have needed otherwise. The humiliation I carried for years had been fuel, and I had burned every last drop of it to get here. On the anniversary of the night my wedding was supposed to happen, I found myself back at Riverstone Hall, not for a party, but to meet a friend who was getting married there. I stood in the lobby for a moment, taking in the same white stone walls, the same chandeliers. It no longer felt like the sight of a loss. It felt like just another place in the city, one I had long since reclaimed in my mind. As I left, I thought about what I would say to the man I was 10 years ago, standing in his small apartment with a suit in the closet and his life falling apart. I would tell him this: you will not only survive this, you will thrive. And one day, you'll stand in the very place where you thought your life ended, and you will smile because it was only the beginning. When I got home that night, I poured a glass of wine, sat on my balcony, and watched the city lights. I felt no bitterness, no lingering need for revenge. What I felt was peace, the kind that comes from knowing you have nothing left to prove. For me, the real victory wasn't in owning Richard's company or standing in Riverstone Hall surrounded by power. It was in building a life that was mine, alone, shaped by my choices, my work, and my resilience. Sometimes the best way to answer those who doubt you isn't with words. It's with the life you build in spite of them. That's my story. If you've ever been told you weren't enough, I hope this reminds you that your value isn't defined by someone else's opinion. You have the power to rebuild, to rise higher than anyone expected, and to create a life you're proud of.